The Midnight Discovery. The marble floors of Hartman Global's headquarters gleamed under the security lights as Eric Monroe pushed his mop across the lobby. It was nearly midnight, and the towering glass building had settled into its after-hours quiet. Eric had been cleaning these floors for almost 7 years, moving through his routine with practiced efficiency. Tonight was different, though. Instead of his usual music, Portuguese vocabulary flowed through his earbuds as he whispered along to an old language podcast. Posso ajudar você, he murmured, perfecting his pronunciation while working. A confused voice interrupted his concentration. Excuse me. A middle-aged man in a wrinkled business coat stood at the reception desk, clutching a crumpled business card. His broken English revealed his frustration as he tried to navigate the empty building. Eric pulled out his earbuds and smiled warmly. Recognizing the company logo on the man's badge, he switched seamlessly to Portuguese. The visitor's face lit up with relief as Eric gave clear directions to the South American division offices. Before Eric could return to his work, another lost soul appeared. A young woman in a mustard coat stood puzzled before the directory screen, muttering in Mandarin. Without hesitation, Eric approached her. He asked gently in perfect Mandarin. Her eyes widened in surprise. Yes, she replied in accented English, I can't find the right department. Eric scanned the screen and guided her toward the correct elevator bay. He said with a genuine smile. Unknown to Eric, someone else was watching from the shadows. CEO Alyssa Hartman stood behind a concrete column on the mezzanine, having come down after a late conference call with London. She had witnessed the entire exchange, this janitor speaking 3 languages with remarkable fluency and cultural sensitivity. As Eric returned to his mop, a French delivery driver entered, confused about storage areas. Once again, Eric stepped forward, conversing easily in French while helping the man find his destination. Alyssa emerged from the shadows, her heels clicking deliberately on the marble floor. Eric turned, slightly startled but maintaining his polite demeanor. That was impressive, she said, studying his face. Mandarin, Portuguese, and French, all in one evening. Eric nodded modestly. I also speak Spanish and some Italian. German when I need to. What's your name? She asked. Eric Monroe, ma'am. Well, Mr. Monroe, I'm Alyssa Hartman. She watched recognition dawn in his eyes. Would you join me upstairs? I'd like to have a conversation. Eric glanced at his cleaning supplies, then back at the CEO whose name was on the building. Something in her expression, not curiosity, but genuine interest, made him nod. All right, Miss Hartman. As they stepped into the elevator together, neither could predict how this chance midnight encounter would change everything. The executive floor. The executive floor felt like stepping into another world. Eric had cleaned these offices before, but only when they were empty and dark. Now, bathed in warm lighting with its thick carpets and citrus-scented air, the space whispered of power and decisions that shaped thousands of lives. Alyssa led him to her corner office, a minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Minneapolis. A single photo on her desk showed 2 young girls with a golden retriever. Please, sit, she said, settling across from him at her desk. Eric perched carefully on the edge of the chair, his work-worn hands resting on his knees. Despite years of cleaning these very offices, being here as a guest felt surreal. I need to be direct with you, Mr. Monroe, Alyssa began. You've worked here for 7 years. You're reliable, punctual, invisible in the best way. But tonight I watched you handle 3 complex situations in 3 different languages with remarkable skill. That's not something you just pick up. So I have to ask, why are you here mopping floors? Eric looked down at his calloused hands, then met her gaze. Is it okay if I tell you the truth? I wouldn't want anything less. He took a deep breath. I was a language teacher. High school, then community college. I was working on my master's in linguistics when my wife got sick. Fast-growing tumor. We fought it for 14 months, but insurance only covered the basics. I burned through our savings, took out loans, sold everything trying to keep her alive. His voice remained steady, but Alyssa noticed his grip tighten slightly. When she passed, I couldn't finish school. Couldn't pay the debt. My son Jacob was 5, and I needed work that let me be home in the mornings to get him ready for school. Night shift janitorial work was the only thing that fit. Why keep learning languages? She asked quietly. Eric's smile was sad but genuine. Because it was the only part of who I used to be that I could hold on to. I'd borrow library books, stream BBC Arabic while cleaning, practice Portuguese with old podcasts. Jacob loves it when I read him bedtime stories in different languages. He speaks 3 languages now himself. Alyssa stood and walked to the window, her reflection caught between glass and shadow. You know, I spend millions on consultants to solve cross-cultural communication problems. I sit in boardrooms listening to talent acquisition specialists, and here, under my own roof, there's someone who's been doing that work invisibly for 7 years. She turned back to him. Can I show you something? Alyssa pulled up security footage on her computer, the black and white feed from the lobby. Eric watched himself on screen, saw the 3 encounters from an outside perspective. I watched this twice, she said. Not just for what you said, but how you said it. You weren't just translating, you were connecting. That's a rare gift. Eric shifted uncomfortably. I appreciate that, but I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm getting at potential, Alyssa said, returning to her seat. Do you still believe in yours? He was quiet for a long moment. I stopped expecting others to believe in it. Maybe it's time someone did. She leaned forward. I'm not offering you a job, not yet. I'm offering you a conversation. One I'd like to continue, with your permission. Eric studied her face, searching for any hint of pity or false hope. He found neither. What kind of conversation? The kind where we figure out how to use that brilliant mind of yours for something bigger than mopping floors. She glanced at the clock, 12:47 a.m. But not tonight. You have work to finish, and I have some thinking to do. Eric stood slowly. May I ask you something, Ms. Hartman? Of course. Why does this matter to you? Alyssa was quiet for a moment, then said, because I've been looking for authentic talent in all the wrong places. And because everyone deserves a second chance to be who they were meant to be. As Eric reached the door, he turned back. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reminding me what real leadership looks like. He left quietly, returning to his mop and bucket, but something had shifted. For the first time in 7 years, Eric Monroe dared to wonder if his story might not be finished after all. The proposal. 3 days passed before Alyssa reached out again. Eric had almost convinced himself their midnight conversation was too good to be true when his supervisor handed him a note. Ms. Hartman would like to see you in conference room B at 3 p.m. Thursday. Eric arrived early, still wearing his custodial uniform but having borrowed a tie from his neighbor. The conference room was smaller than Alyssa's office but still intimidating with its polished table and wall-mounted screens. Alyssa entered carrying a thick folder and 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of Eric and sat across from him. I've been doing research, she began, sliding a document across the table. Our international division has been struggling with communication breakdowns. Last quarter alone, we lost 2 major contracts due to cultural misunderstandings. One in Brazil, one in China. Eric scanned the papers, quarterly reports, consultant recommendations, failed project analyses. We've spent $300,000 on external communication consultants this year, Alyssa continued. They write reports, suggest protocols, but they don't understand our culture or our clients. They're translating words, not building bridges. She leaned forward. I want to create a new position, Director of International Communications. Someone who can work directly with our global teams, prevent these costly mistakes, and help us truly connect with our international partners. Eric's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. You're talking about me. I'm talking about someone with your skills, your intuition, and your heart. She pulled out another document. I took the liberty of looking into your background. Your thesis advisor from the university still remembers you. Dr. Patricia Chen. She said you were one of the most naturally gifted linguists she'd ever taught. You contacted my professor. I contacted several people. Alyssa's expression was serious. Your high school principal said you had the rare ability to make every student feel understood. A former colleague mentioned how you could diffuse tense parent-teacher conferences just by speaking to families in their native language. Eric set down his cup, overwhelmed. Ms. Hartman, I appreciate this, but I haven't worked in that field for 7 years. I don't have the credentials anymore, the recent experience. You've had 7 years of real-world experience, she interrupted. You've kept 5 languages fluent while working full-time and raising a son alone. You've shown more cultural intelligence in one night than most of our consultants show in months. And you've demonstrated something that can't be taught, genuine care for people. She slid a salary proposal across the table. Eric's eyes widened at the number. This would mean regular travel, Brazil, China, Germany, Spain. Usually 1 week per month. I know that's complicated with Jacob. I can't travel that much, Eric said quickly. Jacob needs stability. He's been through enough. Alyssa nodded. I thought you might say that. What if we started differently? What if you worked part-time for the first year, focusing on communication training here in Minneapolis? We could bring international teams to you instead of sending you to them. Eric stared at the proposal, his mind racing. You're really serious about this? Dead serious. But I need to be honest about something else. Alyssa's voice grew quieter. This isn't charity, Eric. We need someone with your abilities. But more than that, I need someone who understands what it means to fight for something that matters. What do you mean? You fought to save your wife. You fought to provide for your son. You fought to keep learning even when the world told you it didn't matter anymore. That kind of determination can't be hired, it has to be lived. She paused. I need someone who knows what it costs to start over. Eric was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Can I think about it? Of course. But Eric? She stood up. Whatever you decide, stop underestimating yourself. The man I met 3 nights ago isn't someone who settles. He's someone who rises. As Eric walked back to the janitor's closet to finish his shift, the proposal folder felt heavier than any mop he'd ever carried. That evening, as he helped 12-year-old Jacob with homework, he found himself seeing possibilities instead of just responsibilities. Dad? Jacob looked up from his Spanish worksheet. You seem different tonight. Eric ruffled his son's hair. Maybe I'm just remembering something I forgot. What's that? That sometimes the best opportunities come when you're not looking for them. Jacob grinned. Is that why you always say to keep learning, even when it seems pointless? Especially when it seems pointless, Eric said, finally understanding the truth of his own words. That night, after Jacob went to bed, Eric sat at their small kitchen table and began writing his response to Alyssa Hartman. The transformation. 2 weeks later, Eric Monroe walked through the lobby of Hartman Global wearing a navy suit instead of a janitor's uniform. The security guard who'd seen him every night for 7 years did a double-take. Mr. Monroe. Morning, Tom, Eric smiled, adjusting his new badge that read, Director of International Communications. His first day was overwhelming. Alyssa had arranged for him to shadow the current international team, observe their video conferences, and review communication protocols. What he saw confirmed everything they'd discussed, missed nuances, cultural blind spots, and relationships strained by misunderstanding. During a conference call with their Sao Paulo office, Eric watched the American team grow frustrated as their Brazilian partner seemed to dodge direct answers about a delayed shipment. They're not being evasive, Eric whispered to the project manager after muting the call. In Brazilian business culture, relationship comes before transaction. They're trying to preserve dignity while explaining the delay. Let me try something. When the call resumed, Eric addressed the Brazilian team in Portuguese, acknowledging the challenges they were facing and expressing understanding for their position. The shift was immediate, shoulders relaxed, voices warmed, and within minutes they had a clear timeline and solution. How did you know? The project manager asked afterward. 7 years of listening, Eric replied. Similar breakthroughs happened throughout his first month. A tense negotiation with German clients smoothed when Eric understood their frustration wasn't about money but about incomplete technical specifications. A Chinese manufacturer's concerns were addressed when Eric recognized they were saving face by not directly contradicting American assumptions. Jacob adjusted to the changes better than Eric had expected. The after-school program was actually better than their old arrangement, and Eric's regular schedule meant they had dinners together every night and full weekends free. "Dad, your job sounds way cooler than mopping floors," Jacob said one evening as Eric helped with his French homework. "Both jobs matter," Eric replied. "But this one uses more of what I love doing." 3 months in, Alyssa called Eric to her office. "The quarterly numbers are in," she said, sliding a report across her desk. "International project success rate is up 40%. Client satisfaction in our overseas divisions has increased significantly. And we haven't needed a single external consultant." Eric felt a pride he hadn't experienced in years. The teams are really starting to understand cultural context. "It's more than that," Alyssa said. "You've changed how our people think about communication itself. Yesterday, I heard Jennifer from accounting ask Roberto from IT to explain something, the Eric way, meaning with patience and cultural awareness." She leaned back in her chair. "There's something else. We've received requests from 3 other companies asking if we provide communication consulting services. Apparently, word is spreading about our transformation." Eric raised an eyebrows. "Are you thinking of expanding?" "I'm thinking of promoting you. Senior Director, with your own team and the budget to develop training programs for other companies." She named a salary that made Eric's eyes widen. "Plus, I want you to consider something else, completing your master's degree. The company will pay for it, and you can structure classes around your schedule." For a moment, Eric couldn't speak. 7 years ago, he'd abandoned his education to survive. Now, success was offering him a chance to reclaim it. "Ms. Hartman," he finally said, "I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by continuing to prove that the best talent isn't always where you expect to find it," she replied. "And by showing other people that their stories aren't finished just because they hit a difficult chapter." That weekend, Eric took Jacob to the campus bookstore to browse graduate school catalogs. As they walked past students hurrying between classes, Jacob looked up at his father. "Dad, do you ever think about Mom?" "Every day," Eric answered honestly. "Do you think she'd be proud of what you're doing now?" Eric stopped walking and knelt down to his son's level. "I think she'd be proud that we never stopped learning, never stopped trying to be better than our circumstances. And I think she'd love seeing you speak 3 languages better than most adults." Jacob grinned. 4 languages. Mrs. Patterson started teaching us basic Italian." Eric laughed, remembering all those nights reading bedtime stories in different languages, never imagining they were building the foundation for moments like this. As they headed home, Eric realized that sometimes the most important transformations happen not when you change everything, but when you finally get the chance to become who you were always meant to be. The legacy. 1 year later, Eric stood before a conference room filled with executives from 12 different companies. His presentation on cultural intelligence in global business had drawn attendees from as far as Seattle and Atlanta. Beside the projector screen hung his newly framed master's degree in applied linguistics. Jacob, now 13 and fluent in 5 languages, sat in the back row, having convinced his father to let him skip school to watch Dad's big presentation. The cost of miscommunication isn't just financial, Eric was saying. It's human. When we fail to truly understand each other, we lose trust, relationships, and opportunities to create something meaningful together. After the presentation, as attendees networked over coffee, Alyssa approached Eric with a knowing smile. 3 companies want to hire you as a consultant, she said. And Harvard Business School called, they want you to guest lecture on multicultural communication. Eric shook his head in amazement. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. Believe it, Alyssa said. But I have one more surprise for you. She led him to the lobby, where a small crowd had gathered around a brass plaque being installed near the reception desk. Eric read the inscription aloud. The Eric Monroe Center for International Communication, where every voice matters. The board approved it last week, Alyssa explained. This program you've built isn't just changing our company, it's becoming a model for others. We want to make sure it continues growing long after you move on to even bigger things. Eric felt tears sting his eyes. You named it after me. You earned it, she said simply. As the crowd dispersed, Jacob bounded over to his father. Dad, this is so cool. Can I bring friends to see your plaque? It's not just my plaque, Eric said, pulling his son close. It represents something bigger, the idea that everyone has value, even when others can't see it yet. That evening, Eric and Jacob walked through the same lobby where everything had changed 18 months earlier. The night janitor, Maria, was mopping the marble floors just as Eric once had. Buenas noches, Maria, Eric called out in Spanish. ¿Cómo está tu hijo? Maria's face lit up. Muy bien, gracias. He got accepted to community college, wants to study business. That's wonderful news. If he ever needs help with languages for his studies, let me know. As they headed to the parking garage, Jacob looked thoughtful. Dad, do you think there are other people like Maria who have hidden talents? I'm sure of it, Eric replied. The world is full of brilliant people just waiting for someone to notice. Maybe when I grow up, I'll be the kind of person who notices. Eric stopped and looked at his son, this remarkable young man who spoke 5 languages, who'd watched his father rebuild their life from nothing, who understood that success meant lifting others up. Jacob, you're already that kind of person. 6 months later, Eric received a call that would once again change everything. The United Nations was looking for a director of cross-cultural communications for their humanitarian programs. The position would involve traveling the world, breaking down language barriers in crisis zones, and helping coordinate international relief efforts. It's an incredible opportunity, Eric told Alyssa over lunch. But I don't know if I can take Jacob away from his friends, his school. What does Jacob think? She asked. He's excited about it. Says he wants to help people who really need it. But he's 14, he doesn't understand what he'd be giving up. Alyssa was quiet for a moment. Eric, 18 months ago you were mopping floors because you believed you didn't have choices. Don't make decisions now based on fear of what might go wrong. Make them based on what could go right. That night, Eric and Jacob sat on their apartment balcony, looking out over the city lights. The same view Eric had stared at during those long nights when the future seemed impossibly narrow. Dad, Jacob said quietly, I've been thinking about the UN job. Yeah. I think you should take it. Not because I want to travel, though that would be cool, but because you taught me that our abilities are gifts. And gifts are meant to be shared with people who need them most. Eric looked at his son, marveling at the wisdom in those young eyes. When did you get so smart? I had a good teacher, Jacob grinned. Plus, I figure if we can handle moving from a janitor's closet to a corner office, we can handle anything. 3 months later, Eric Monroe boarded a plane to Geneva, Switzerland, with his son by his side and a career that spanned continents ahead of them. In his carry-on bag was a small photo, not of himself receiving awards or recognition, but of Maria, the night janitor, at her son's college graduation. Because some transformations are measured not just by how high you rise, but by how many others you lift up along the way. As the plane climbed above the clouds, Eric opened his laptop and began drafting a proposal for the UN's Hidden Talents Initiative, a program to identify and develop overlooked potential in refugee camps and underserved communities worldwide. The boy who once read bedtime stories in 5 languages had become a man whose voice could be heard around the world. And somewhere below in Minneapolis, a brass plaque caught the morning light, reminding everyone who passed that extraordinary can be found in the most ordinary places, if you're willing to listen. The end.